Council met today at noon in closed session. We'd now ask the city attorney to report out on the closed session.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the council adjourned to closed session at approximately 12:02 p.m. The council heard reports from the city manager regarding pending labor negotiations with all bargaining groups. There's no action to report with regard to that item. The board also considered pending litigation, McCabe Union School District versus City of El Centro et al. Mayor Walker left due to conflict of interest, which she's stated previously, having to do with her husband being a named plaintiff and member of the school board for two of the plaintiffs. And she left at 12:20. She returned at 12:30 after the item had been concluded, and there's no action to report with regard to those two litigation matters. The board then considered the the evaluations of the city attorney, city manager, and secretary to the council. Staff left at approximately 12:30 p.m. and it's my understanding that the council adjourned its closed session at 12:50, and there are no actions to report with regard to those items.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. This is a public meeting. If there is an item on the agenda on which you wish to be heard, please complete a speaker slip and give it to the city clerk. When the item is announced by the mayor, come forward to the microphone, address yourself to the council, stating your name and address for the record. Unless the mayor extends the time, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the council concerning any other matter within the council's jurisdiction, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. At this time, there'll be no presentations or announcements by the mayor. We do have 3 scheduled public comments. The first is our monthly report by the El Centro Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Dubois, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Bill Dubois, 935 North Imperial Avenue, President of the Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. The Chamber passes along its congratulations, not just to the new mayor, but to our past mayor as well. And congratulations on not only your election, but your past service as well. The Chamber wanted to remind you that we were not merely on the sidelines during the campaign for Measure M, but we were active supporters of the aye vote for the city charter. We have formed a city charter task force of the business leaders who are on the chamber. We want to remind you, although I'm sure you may not need the reminder, that the businesses in the community are what generates your income side of the city budget through the generation of sales tax. Not only do we generate the money, we collect it and remit it to the city. And when we look forward to working not just with city staff, but also with you, the policymakers, when it comes time to develop the norms and procedures to implement the city charter. The Chamber of Commerce has some very strong feelings about the norms and procedures that we feel are appropriate to implement the city charter. We look forward to that. We are also looking forward to this weekend for the parade, Tamale Festival, community tree lighting. Hope to see all of you there as well. Thank you, and that's our monthly report.
Thank you, Mr. Dubois. Our next scheduled public comment is from the Fair Housing Services update. This will be followed by Mr. Norm Whiten.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Jess Torres with Inland Fair Housing and Mediation Board. And I'm happy to report that our office is now up and running. It's located at 444 South 8th Street. And we have just placed a foreclosure counselor in that office. And may I add that the foreclosure counselor is being financed by a grant that we have. We were able to work it so that we could get a counselor there. And since the office is opened, obviously we've seen more activity there, more people there. Our foreclosure counselor is right now averaging approximately 6 counselings per day. And it's still not enough. There are many, many more foreclosures and default notices out there. But we are working to increase our outreach in the community, and with the staff members that we have there, we really look forward to having just a greater presence in the community. So we're glad that we were able to get the office going. We're glad that we have that counselor there as well as another staff person.
I believe we have a link on our website, Mr. Duran, to the Inland Fair Housing. The address one more time for?
It's 444 South 8th Street.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
just south of Main Street, I believe.
Okay.
And we are also planning on increasing our outreach, doing more education in the community, and hopefully working in partnership with the housing industry and the Realtors Association and providing fair housing education and also technical advice when they need it. So we look forward to increasing our outreach in the community.
Very good. Questions of council? Mr. Silva?
I don't know if you can answer this, Mr. Torres. Do you have any updated numbers in terms of the number of foreclosures or people that may be still in jeopardy? And is that number continuing to rise?
Well, actually, the city of El Centro is averaging, I did a little search just a few hours ago. From January of 1st of this year to today, there were 941 in El Centro. And, you know, we are helping, on the foreclosure umbrella, we are helping everyone in the Imperial Valley. But so it seems as if there's approximately 80, 85 per month that are either in all stages of foreclosure, whether it's a default notice that's just been received. And so one of the things that we're doing this month is we're sending out a mailing to all the new default notices from November 1st until now to reach those persons. One of the things that we find in our agency, even up in San Bernardino County, is that it's very difficult to get the word out. We don't have a big advertising budget. So it's very difficult to get the word out that you're here. And then with all the scams out there, a lot of people look at us and say, I don't know who you are. Even though we do not charge for our services, they look at us and they're a little leery. Mm-hmm. So 941 for El Centro, Imperial had 659 for the same period, and Calexico had 1,057, and Brawley 389 for that almost a 12-month period, 11-month period. One of the things that I can tell you about since the new stimulus plan, we have been more successful at obtaining loan modifications than we were previously. I would say that we're close to helping 70% obtain some type of a loan modification or forbearance agreement.
And that would be the question that I was going to ask you, Mr. Torres. Approximately, what percentage? And you said it was about 70%?
We're thinking, I haven't done the hard figures, but we're pretty close to that. When we started, we estimated that we were helping about 40% save their homes. And it was very difficult. And it still is rather difficult dealing with servicers. It's a long, arduous process, but it's been shortened. And there's some things in place that help us to quicken that process.
Questions? Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, we have now a request by Norm Whitens, Curator, Imperial County Historical Society.
Good evening. You already told everybody my name. You still want me to give my name? Norm Whitens,
Address, please.
Curator of Pioneers Museum. Well, first of all, I didn't have this to say until I got here, but I want to say I admire and respect you as a council for having a prayer. That I think that really says something for this country. I'm going to give you a report on a 1919 American LaFance fire engine that you probably don't know you own, I'm not sure. But if you want to see what it looks like, I have some photos. I don't know. I don't know if you know anything about it. About 3 or 4 years ago, and maybe it was longer than that, the truck was loaned to us to restore and repair and get it back to running condition. The engine had been severely damaged. It was a long and arduous process. There's 2 people that were formerly worked in the fire department here in El Centro. Norm Heil and Roy Bird were both firemen here, and they are the ones that restored it. It's not completely finished, but the main part of the restoration was the engine, and that's why the hood is off. And the reason I'm reporting now is because about 2 weeks ago they got it running, and they have actually worked on it that long. We actually shipped the engine, the complete engine, in pieces back to a friend of mine in Harleysville, Pennsylvania, who is a restoration person, and he does it as a job. And he traded some parts with us so that we'd have the right parts to put it back together, because everything was mismatched. But anyway, I'll give you a little history about your fire engine. It came from the LA Fire Department. LA Fire Department bought it new from American LaFrance in 1919 or 1920. It remained in service there for about 25 years, and then they decided they wanted something newer, and they put it up for sale, and El Centro bought it. Now, I've only lived in the valley for a little over half a century, so I don't know too much about rivalries, but I think one exists between Brawley and El Centro. The next time a fire engine in LA, another fire engine came up for sale that was similar to that one, Brawley decided they had to have one. So we actually have both of them. The one Brawley had is a 1921. Looks exactly like that one almost, a few differences. None of the fire engines that were made at that time, or I would say very few, remained in original condition, because once the fire departments got them, they made changes. So the other one that we have, there have been changes. They changed windshields and fenders and this and that. But anyway, we call this a fire engine because for those of you that don't know, a fire engine pumps, a fire truck does not. And this engine pumps, and it will pump. And when we finish restoration, somewhere or other there's an agreement, and I don't even know what we did with our copy of the agreement, between the city and the museum, that we were to restore it. And when we finish restoration, the El Centro Fire Department and ourselves would both be able to use it at different. Am I over my time?
No, well, we're hoping that you would move
Hurry.
it along just a little bit, but I'm looking for the fire chief here. Have you made contact?
Miss Walker, did you make the motion to buy that thing in
No,
1919?
heck no. But I did see myself in the photographs. Thank you very much. But
So to move on,
Yes.
there's something I would really like the council to do, and you don't have to do it tonight. I don't expect anything tonight. We have spent between $5,000 and $10,000 on the truck. If you cannot deaccession it to us, I would like to have some kind of an agreement or an MOU so that when we use it or when the fire department uses it for some kind of a function, that we're sure that somebody from the museum is always with that truck. Because after the money we've spent, we don't want anything else to happen to it. So I don't know if you want something legally drawn up by your staff or myself or.
I think
where you'd like to go.
What we'd like to do is if you could spend a couple of minutes with our city manager, Mr. Duran, and he will give you further direction on how to accomplish that.
Okay. Tonight or later?
Right now. Right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the council will move on to the consent agenda. Any member of the council like to pull any item? If not, I'll look for a blanket motion to approve items 4 through 13.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Solomon, second by Mr. Silva. Please ballot.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. We are going to move forward one item on the agenda. That's item number 15. Item 15 is discussion and necessary action regarding the acceptance and filing of the 2008-2009 El Centro Regional Medical Center Annual Report. My pleasure to introduce Mr. David Green, CEO, Hospital Administrator.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. It's our pleasure to present to you the annual report that you should have received in your packet. I brought a few extras, and they just fell on the floor. But, so the annual report this year, as you know, in past years, it's been relatively plain. We decided to follow the direction of many of the other hospitals and give you an annual report that really shows what's going on at El Centro Regional and gives you a little more of the flair of the things that we're able to accomplish there. This year, we're able to bring many additional accomplishments in customer service, further improvements in the emergency services as we continue to work on them, yet always. We're never finished working or improving things. But we're continuing to work on bringing additional services. Having been a user of the services myself this past year, both here and over the hill, I'm committed to getting some of the services we don't currently have here available to the local communities so that they don't have to traverse the hill when they feel so sick and it's difficult. So I want to reverse that trend for people, and we are committed to bringing several service lines into service in the coming years. So hopefully you'll be able to see that. We've made good progress on them thus far, and as you can see, the hospital is continuing to improve, both financially as well as on service line development. We're putting additional funding into our customer service development and into additional things. So I think you'll continue to see a brighter future for El Centro Regional Medical Center, as well as the continued development of the campus in both the buildings and the other issues that we're facing in the future. Development for the seismic safety, further development is taking place in that will come to you at a later time. Any questions?
Ms. Sanders?
No questions.
Mr. Silva?
No question other than to say that I thought it was an excellent report, and not only the information was valuable, but I really want to commend you on the design, and I saw a lot of pictures that appeared to be either local pictures, but I thought it really reflected on the diversity of our communities, and that's something that I thought was very important.
Thank you. Kathleen Pipkin, our new Director of Public Relations, was one of the authors of putting these things together and did pull local photos into the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Green, just a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. One, I wanted to thank you on the opportunity to go by the hospital last night and see your new, I guess we call that pediatric ward.
Unit, right, yeah.
Much improved, and it's certainly going back. It's been years since I'd been in that area of the hospital since it closed down, and I remember being in the entryway. But significant improvement, and I think a lot of credit goes to you and your staff, but also for the community to come in and sponsor some of those rooms so that those improvements could be made. I also think it'd be a great opportunity. I think you guys had a very successful financial year over there, and you might want to comment a second on that, because it's not directly in your report, but I think it's one of the better years, certainly in the 6 years I've been on the council. And I think that goes to the efforts of you.
It's one of the best years we've ever had, but let me point out, although there's an excess revenue over expenses, we spend that much or more in capital expenditures, as you know, who've been on the board. It takes that much to continue to stay on the forefront of healthcare. So it takes that, but we're doing that so that we can stay on the forefront, and it is being reinvested in the community. So it is money that stays in the city, stays in the organizational structure, and is not, although it's excess revenue, it is capital. The way we raise capital is by the excess revenue over expenses. And although there's about $5 million, we probably spent about $6 million in capital expenditures this year. So all that money goes back into it, and as you know, we have to even go outside to get additional capital, as we will be on some of the building projects in the future. But we're reinvesting that back in, and so we have to stay on our toes administratively to continue to improve that so that we can provide that higher level of service in the community.
Okay, thank you. And then, because I no longer serve on the hospital board, I'm not as up to date. Could you give me just a couple brief points on how the new hospitalist program is working?
Well, the hospitalist program started in July. We now are able, for those coming to the hospital without a local physician, for them to be able to be seen by a hospitalist who is in the hospital 24 hours, 7 days a week. And the hospitalist program are physicians or internists that are trained specifically to do more intense care and are able to offer the additional services to our local physicians. By no means should demean what our current local physicians are doing, because they've been absolutely wonderful in supporting the hospital over the years and rendering their services and care to the local citizens. But this brings the ability for us to even go a step higher by having those folks readily available 24 hours a day. So those that are seen by the hospitalists when they come in, the hospitalists are in the hospital, so families that are there at different times of the day have easier access to be able to see their physician. And it just adds an additional edge to people being able to get better care. So it's going well so far.
Good. I mean, thank you. And I know that was a high priority of the board for a number of years, and you and your staff deserve a lot of credit for getting that off the ground. And I think we'll see a lot of benefit over that. I think, when will you do your next survey? Will a question be on your next public survey in regard to the hospitalist program?
Well, we're working on amending the surveys that are done for customers that come in. As you know, there's a certain percentage of them that are surveyed, and we're changing some of the questions, so we will be asking some questions.
I'd like to see something on there. That'd be a good feedback as not just
That's a good
1 year, but
suggestion.
over the next couple of years.
We'll make sure that comes back to you as well.
Thank you,
We, of
Doug.
course, at the hospital are keeping our eyes and ears on Washington, D.C. to see what comes out with the healthcare plan and the impacts that it will have on our hospital. Our charity care this last year was, I think, in the range of $18 million. Charity care
A little over
provided-
$18 million.
provided to our friends, family, and community members that could not otherwise pay for their care. Obviously, one of the things that the City Council is very excited about is the new outpatient center that we're partnering on.
The end of the bank. You could,
Fourth and Main Street.
Right. We're excited about that new clinic, and we'll be moving the rural health clinic into the new building. That will give additional space for additional clinicians to be able to practice there and offer speedier and a more broader base of care in a rural health clinic that we provide in the community. So we're excited to get that building going, and we're working with the city and Mr. Duran's staff to get all of the necessary preliminaries done so that we can get started on that building, hopefully so we can get it completed this year.
And the last comment for the benefit of the council is we will probably be moving up our strategic planning session. Usually we have it a little later in the spring, but because there are so many things happening at the hospital that require some long-term planning, we will be moving our strategic planning session up, we hope.
We'll be doing it sooner, and hopefully we will have word from Washington what they are going to do to us. All
Exactly.
kinds of reports are flying, and we're moving at a fast pace to try to keep our guard on each one of those different directions and to minimize the impact it has negatively on us, if any, and capitalize on the ones that can be positive. So We are trying to stay abreast of everything happening in Washington as well as Sacramento. As you know, the impact on the city and us continues to be a threat from the budget crisis.
Did you have something, Mr. Solomon? Yes.
Mr. Green, I also would like to thank you for the way that layout looks. It was really, really done well. It was one of those that is kind of inviting, that makes you pick it up and want to go through it. I thought the added attraction to me was the new health center on 4th, as Gerald had talked about. But one of the things that I really wanted to take a moment and just applaud you on is that how you have changed the image of that hospital. I can remember it, and I shared it with you once before, you know, when we had the old county hospital and it closed, and it seemed like everybody was saying that the El Centro Community Hospital was actually the old county hospital, and I thought for a long time there, you know, there was a stigma to it, that it was kind of low, not a, you know, top of the line. Yeah, not a top of the line, even though it was. And I think that over the years you have done a tremendous job in turning that around and letting people see that we have a top flight quality hospital. And I want to commend you on that, because I think that you have done a tremendous job in that area.
Well, thank you. It's the staff that made the change and continues to make it. But we're going to make it even better. Like I said, having received care this past year on both sides of the hill, the time I spent in our hospital was much more pleasant than on the other side of the hill. And I hear that from more and more people, but we are definitely committed to making that even more of a factor in future times, and improving our customer service and customer relations on the services that we do provide. So we still have a long ways to go, and we still have a lot of things to do. We are absolutely, we don't claim to be perfect, but we are definitely striving to become better and better and provide excellence in health care to the Imperial Valley. That's our commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you.
We do have one housekeeping item. We have an added item this evening. If I could get a motion to add a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro declaring a used shade structure to be needed for a public use and authorizing its donation to the McCabe Union Elementary School District.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Solomon, second by Sanders to add. Please ballot.
Motion carried 5-0.
Okay, we will address this item after item 14. At this time, we will move forward with item number 14. This is a petition to rename 8th Street from McCabe Road to Ayton Road. This petition has been presented at 2 prior public hearings, one before an administrative committee, which determined that the petition met the requisite requirements to be heard by the Planning Commission. The petition was then heard by the Planning Commission on November 3rd. At the conclusion of the hearing, the Planning Commission recommended denial of the petition. For that reason, it's a little difficult for us to make out on these slips if you are in favor or in opposition to the recommendation. So when we come to the public participation, the public comment portion, what we are going to do is ask the proponents, Mr. Walker and Mr. Stevens, to go first, to be followed by anyone else that is in favor of the renaming. At the conclusion of that portion of the public testimony, we will ask for those in opposition to the renaming to please come up and to give their testimony. We are requesting that you be respectful of everyone's time and that you try to stay on point and that you limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible. With that, we'll turn it over to staff. Oh, Mr. Edney, I apologize.
Madam Mayor, I have been advised by the City Attorney's Office that I have a conflict because of my business in Pearl Valley Real Estate Services located on 8th Street. So I will recuse myself from this item, but because it has an impact significantly on my livelihood and my family's livelihood, I have been advised by the City Attorney that unlike on other issues, I will have the ability to remain in the room as a member of the audience and would like to request the opportunity to reserve a chance to speak on this issue if I so desire.
Thank you, Mr. Redden. We'll now turn it over to city staff. Ms. Villacana.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mayor and members of the council. As Mayor Walker mentioned, this item has been before the Administrative Committee and also before the Planning Commission. The petition was submitted by Mr. Donald Walker and Mr. Gary Stevens to rename 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. A little bit of the background. The petition was submitted back in August 5th of 2009. The city policy on renaming streets requires that at least 10 signatures that identify the use of an address on the affected street be on the petition in order to consider the petition. The petition consisted of 273 signatures. Out of those 273 signatures, 44 signatures identified the use of an 8th Street address. On September 10, 2009, the petition was submitted to the Administrative Committee. The Administrative Committee reviewed the petition and forwarded to the Planning Commission for further consideration. And finally, on November 3rd, 2009, the Planning Commission considered the petition and recommended denial. This is a map of the city of El Centro, and this is 8th Street. I just want to show you that along 8th Street, there's 292 properties along 8th Street. Out of those 292 properties, 125 have street addresses assigned to 8th Street. Out of those 125 properties, 82 of those addresses are residential properties. 39 of those addresses are commercial and church properties. And 4 addresses are assigned to either a school or a city-owned property. Yes, out of the 292 properties that are along 8th Street, 125 have street addresses assigned to 8th Street. Out of the 125, 82 are residential, 39 are commercial and church properties, and 4 are either city or school properties. And this is just to show you that there's a variety of zones along 8th Street. Commercial, residential, public use. So going back to the city's policy for renaming city property and streets, on page 5 of the policy, it states that street name changes on inhabited streets should be approved only when it can be clearly demonstrated that a majority of the inhabitants favor the action, or that the name change will improve public safety and welfare. Staff identified and analyzed several issues associated with the proposed name change. One of them was the issue of safety. Safety issues included basically the initial confusion of residents and the public during the transition of the proposed name. Another issue that was considered was whether the name change would be for the entire street segment or just one segment, or whether it would have a dual name. There's many cities that have dual name streets. It could be 8th Street, Martin Luther King. Again, the issue was basically confusion of, for the population. Another issue that came up was dispatching concerns, whether our police department or dispatching personnel would be would have problems, whether it's an 8th Street or whether it had a dual name. And then the last one was the disruption of the existing numbered grid. Right now we have 7th, 8th, 9th, and so forth. So that would be, those are things that were analyzed during our staff report. Another issue that was analyzed was the cost. The street naming policy that the city has states that the proponent of the, if a street name is, if the renaming of a street is approved, the proponent shall pay for the cost associated with the name change. Therefore, the cost, and this is just a rough estimate, basically the cost would be the signage. There would be 40 small signs on minor cross streets, and then there's also some large illuminated signs at the major intersections, such as Adams and 8th and Ross, and so forth. So the cost that we received, and again, this is an approximate cost, would be around $50,000. Another issue that came up was the cost to the private businesses and the residents. After the administrative committee meeting, we received over 30 letters from several individuals who either had businesses along 8th Street or are residents along 8th Street that are in opposition of the name change. And the only reason was because of the cost to replace their letterhead, their signs, and so forth. And those are included in your packet. This is something that, while we were trying to get a cost estimate of the signage, this is something that was proposed, the different types of signage that could be accomplished if the name change is approved. And these are just pictures of the major intersections that Adams and 8th, Broadway, Main Street, State, and Ross Avenue. Those are the ones that would have the large signs. During our analysis, staff also looked at different alternatives that could be proposed. One of the alternatives was to rename a less inhabited street. And one of those, for example, Villa Avenue, we looked at that. And basically there are less properties that would be affected by the name change. Right now there are 14 properties along the western segment of Villa, and there are 29 properties along the eastern segment. And that the railroad is the middle point. So, and most of those properties, I believe all of those properties are residential properties. Another alternative was naming a new street. As you know, we have several projects that have been approved, and hopefully in the near future we'll have new development come in. And the naming of a new street will have no impact whatsoever. However, it may take several years for that to happen. The other alternative was to rename a segment of a street or have a dual street name. Again, the main issue was the confusion that this may create. And this alternative will not reduce the cost associated with the signage.
Ms. Villacana, with regard to that alternative, was there research done, like in San Diego? There's a portion of 94 that is designated in honor of Dr. King. I believe that involves Caltrans being involved. Was that one of the alternatives?
That's one of the alternatives, yes.
Okay.
Something like that. So at this time, what we are recommending is that allow public input and adopt one of the following options. Motion to approve the petition to rename 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Drive with the conditions and the adoption of a finding that it will improve public safety and welfare. And if this motion is approved, if this option is approved, what we recommend is to allow maybe a year for the proponents to maybe come up with the cost, the funding for the signage, or, you know, allow a timing, phase it in if this option is approved by the council. The other option would be to deny the petition and, or to continue the public hearing for further study. And this concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions of Ms. Viacania at this time? Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
Ms. Vicanya, on your presentation, you identified 44 names within the petition that were people that were identified as residing or having an interest on 8th Street. That number has been disputed by the chamber letter that disputes that number, and in fact, some of the people that signed that petition have no vested interest. Are we able to confirm that information, or?
That's correct. Some of those signatures that we received that had 8th Street addresses, where some of those were county employees, which we received an email from the CEO that those signatures, those employees could not speak on behalf of the county. So basically, those signatures are not counted, but they are part of the 44.
Okay.
And there's also other signatures that people signed, and then they came back and wanted to remove their signature.
Yeah. But they're still being reflected
They're
on
still being reflected
that
with the
number.
44.
But to summarize, I think the point that the chamber was making in its letter of September 29th was of the signatures submitted, 4 business owners signed the petition, 2 then filed letters of opposition. So in effect, we had 2 business owners sign the petition supporting the
That's correct.
Okay. Did you have additional questions?
That's it right now.
Additional questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Mr.
No, I'm
Solomon.
sorry.
One more, and that is, how many signatures were actually needed to bring this to the administrative committee, the planning commission, and now to the city council?
The city's policy states that only 10 signatures are needed
So they had the correct number.
to bring it to the commission and to the city council.
Nothing at this time.
For the benefit of the audience, I would like to summarize that the recommendation by the Planning Commission to deny the petition for the renaming was based on 3 factors. The cost to the city, estimated at $50,000 for changing the street signs. That would be if this cost was not paid for by the petitioners. The second factor was the cost to property owners, including a number of businesses that would need to change business cards, stationery, phone listings, marketing materials. I believe those estimates ranged from $2,000 to over $100,000 for the affected businesses. The third factor that went into the Planning Commission's denial was that the city's street renaming policy provides that the street name changes on inhabited streets should only be approved when it can be clearly demonstrated that a majority of the inhabitants favor the action or that the name change would improve public safety. Those were the 3 factors.
That's
Anything
correct.
else? Okay. I'd also like to summarize for the audience that as part of the agenda materials, the City Council has been provided with the application filed by Mr. Walker and Mr. Stevens and the attached signed petition, a copy of the City of El Centro name change policy, opposition letters filed by the Chamber of Commerce, 30 business owners, residential property owners, and additional letters that we have received this evening are not included in these totals. I'd also like to state that in addition to the options, if we could go back to that slide, please, Ms. Villacana. The council has actually come up with a fourth option that we would like to consider for this evening. The fourth option is a resolution that was provided to the council this evening that would deny the petition. However, this resolution expresses the council's support with working with our community to identify an enduring and fitting memorial to honor Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. So there is another option in front of us this evening. If there are no additional...
Can I ask one more
Yes,
question?
sir.
Ms. Villacana, as you looked at this and evaluate this, did you get a chance or an opportunity to see what other cities have done when they have gone through a street change like this? You know, some of the bigger cities have changed the names to Martin Luther King, to Cesar Chavez, and cost is obviously a factor that will play wherever this happens. Do we contact any of those cities and see and to identify the dynamics that took place within those changes?
Not locally, however, we did Mr. Coyne did some research national, and it varies. There are some cities that, you know, they had a hard time getting it approved. However, it was approved. And the way it was done, it was basically either having a dual name, that was one alternative, or having it phased in where there's a time period to phase it in. But locally, we did not.
Questions?
Yes,
Sandra?
yes, thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I just wish to dovetail onto the idea that you have advanced for a resolution. There is no resolution for this concept that I would like to at least put out for the proponents for consideration. And that is to look at 8th Street north of Adams Avenue to the city limits for naming, or 8th Street south of Ross Avenue to the city limits. And so those concepts, as we began to discuss this and flesh this out more thoroughly, would be on the table for consideration, recognizing that the proponents would, as I understand it, would need to give some thought to amending their particular item that's before us now, because what's before us now does not allow us that flexibility. But I think if, in fact, they wish to go that direction, amendment could take place, and we can consider that at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Thank you for the presentation. At this time, we would ask that the proponents of the proposal, Mr. Walker and Mr. Stevens, if you could please start your presentation. And again, if we could be mindful of our time.
Good evening to all. It would be very difficult for me to try to diffuse much of that which I've heard this evening. So what I'm asking is that I be allowed to present the alternatives and or the alternative that was offered to us, pictures that concern public safety, public welfare, and 8th Street. Then I would like to get into my speech, if allowed the time. First, that's difficult for me to read from here. But anyway, what it is, the content of it is that the Planning and Zoning Committee offered this as an alternate to renaming 8th Street. Then I'll go forth with these pictures quickly. This is a dogwood and Villa, which continues straight on to a dead end to a canal. Continue. Again, this is Dogwood and Villa. This is Villa leading from Dogwood into the end of Villa, which intersects with 4th Street, but going across, it runs into Granillos, which doesn't have a name, of Villa, and it dead ends at the railroad track. Again, this is what was presented to us by the Planning and Zoning Committee. This is the cross-section of Dogwood and Villa. Basically, is where it ends and goes to the canal. This, since we're so concerned about streets, this is what the Planning and Zoning Committee offered us. This is Villa, crossing 4th, going to the railroad track where it dead ends. And this is another store. And along the way of Villa, this is the avenue leading through the residential. And again, the streets and the residential. Again, street, residential. And this is where it sort of ends before 4th Street, leading to the railroad tracks. And I've mentioned Granillo, the end. And this is the resident that's at the end of Villa. That's the train on the track. And now we're getting into 8th Street to offer you the difference. This is Pico Market on 8th. And this is a view of 8th Street going north. Again, another view right off Buena Vista. And the Adams crossing and 8th Street going across. You'll notice how clean and sightly it is. This is our plunge. And here are some of the businesses located along that avenue. Very nice. And one of our opponents. And this is the fire station. As you can see, it allows you a visual contact of Adams, and you can read the rest there. This is 7-Eleven along 8th. And this is Imperial Valley Press along 8th. Visual residential area. And this is a building located on 8th. And this is the U.S. border unit right outside of 8th Street. And again, this is a view of 8th Street. And this is a church along 8th Street. And this is our great water tower. And this is Buckland Park, which is located on 8th Street. And this is 8th Street, going over the railroad tracks headed north. And that's Campesinos Unidos along 8th Street. Everything is very sightly, scenic along 8th Street. And this is downtown. We're going into public safety and welfare. It's very difficult to define public safety and welfare. I don't think anyone can really put a finger on just how to cover that efficiently. Again, this is downtown involving public safety, welfare. You'll notice the signs here again, public safety and welfare. Go on. Again, public safety, welfare, public safety, welfare, public safety, welfare, and Dr. Martin Luther King. Okay. Okay, and now I'd like to get into my the body of this matter, this concern. 21st Century Speech, El Centro City Council meeting Wednesday, December the 2nd, time 6 p.m. City Hall, Chamber of Commerce. City Hall, City Chamber, 1275 West Main. Board members, Honorable Cheryl Villegas Walker, Sedalia Sanders, Benjamin Solomon III, Efren Silva, John Edney. Petition to rename 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. 21st century, giving all praises to God first. Good evening to all. My name is Donald Walker on behalf of the Custom Mission Inquiry. Gary Stevens, Roberto Rubio, Eric Reyes, Mike Singh, Donald Walker, myself. We would like to thank the Administrative Committee and the Planning and Zoning Committee who allowed us to know that we've met all the requirements for the opportunity to address the most significant and urgent issue facing our city tonight, which is renaming 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive before you, the City Council of El Centro. We, the Commission Inquiry, evolved out of a cause with a mission. We are something that brings about an effect. We are an occasion of an action. We are a reason for action. We are charged to carry on a humanitarian work. We seek to serve and to save. We, knowing, loving yields, leading the city of El Centro. In the city of El Centro's policy for naming city properties and streets, its introduction is that the city of El Centro's desire is to establish a uniform policy to name city facilities and portions thereof, including but not limited to parks and recreation facilities, bikeways, libraries, fire stations, city hall, police department facilities, parking lots, city streets, and entryways to the city. Its purpose to honor persons or historic events as this process acknowledges and memorializes a special person or event, which enhances the value and heritage of the city. We filed the petition for renaming 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Drive with the city clerk on August 5th of this year, 2009. We want to deeply thank the approximate 300 residents of the city of El Centro who expressed and embraced our efforts to honor the esteemed legacy of Dr. King Jr. by joining us in supporting and signing the petition to rename 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, far exceeding the city renaming policy requirement of only 10 signatures. The El Centro Planning Staff Report addressing our proposal to rename 8th Street in the discussion section acknowledges, in the spirit of community goodwill and in the best interest of public welfare, Chicago, Illinois, in 1968 became the first city in the country to name a street after Dr. King. Los Angeles in 1983, Santa Barbara Boulevard was named after Dr. King 3 years before President Ronald Reagan signed a law declaring Dr. King's birthday a national holiday. Nearly 800 cities across America since 1986 have offered up the best scenic thoroughfares their city had to offer in tribute to Dr. King's commitment to justice, peace, and civil nonviolent demonstrations, very much like we have assembled here in this city chamber hall tonight. Our city and its multicultural citizenry have benefited greatly and directly as a result of the sacrifices of Dr. King and other freedom fighters throughout history. As our city has grown and prospered over the years under the leadership of 3 African-American mayors in El Centro since 1960s, beginning with Du Bois McGee, to our past Honorable Mayor, Benjamin Solomon III, including for multiple-term mayor and now serving our city as City Councilwoman Sedalia Sanders. Please know that we share common interests with the Administrative Committee, the Planning and Zoning Department, and our community at large with the stated imperative issues related to street change, safety of the public, cost, public welfare. We look forward to working with the city staff to address widespread distribution to public at large with television public service announcements and newsprint media to issue awareness of pending change to ease initial public confusion, including direct notification efforts to affected residents. Working with our law enforcement community to ensure public safety dispatching adjustment related to renaming changes. We also look forward to uniting with the city staff to ensure that 8th Street revisions will be easy to navigation along the grid, while cost factors most often are the most heated issues related to renaming anything in honor of Dr. King. It has served as the weakest. Surely the untallied cost of injustice, iniquity, and cultural and racial insensitivity through our nation's history is immeasurable. However, we don't concur with projections on the estimated renaming replacement of all 50 signs revisions. Just as common as the renaming request has become, so is the bond that we too forged with the city of El Centro to secure all and any federal, state, local, private project monies available. Perhaps most important, but most often overlooked, is the public welfare. What's the community's best interest? In the legacy of Dr. King's struggle to help us to get it right. Yes, there will be some postal logistics related to the changes that will need to be addressed by commercial businesses and church properties, as well as residents who will directly be impacted. However, we look forward to partnering with local postal officials to ensure smooth address change transitioning. Renaming street alternatives in the best interest and spirit of Dr. King. We are here tonight to address only renaming 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. The commission inquiry paid the processing fee of $428 set forth under Section 2929-6 of the zoning ordinance, Chapter 29 of the City Code of the City of El Centro. Those business persons haven't filed any fees in ordinance with Chapter 29 of the City Code of the City of El Centro. Furthermore, business owners have failed to present any legitimate documentation or history that reveals that any street, boulevard, avenue, or highway has had a negative effect on businesses, airports, thoroughfares, public welfare, or public safety. Some of these businesses have had to relocate on their own accord, changing whatever was necessary. On the other side, Dr. King's legacy has brought community pride, educational research, and venues for parades and visual awareness to tourism, because the thoroughfares are in the best cultural landscape of that community. Commemoration isn't simply about the appropriateness of remembering the past, but a legacy of present history. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, and to inspire humanitarianism to our humanity of the 21st century to infinity. In closing, we, the Commission Inquiry, in our efforts to carry on a humanitarian work where reason for action prevails, we thank the Administrative Committee, the Planning and Zoning Committee, and leave our faith in a historical decision to our present City Council of El Centro. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. At this time, Mr. Stevens, were you also going to make
I'll just follow up
a few comments, please?
Okay. I'll withhold on 3 minutes, within that 3 minute time frame.
That would be fantastic.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to stand before you here today, a distinguished body. I'm really appreciative to stand before you here today, your distinguished body. Obviously, as Mr. Walker had mentioned, you are faced with making a very uncommon decision. We stand before you and dare you to be uncommon. Almost 800 cities have had to make this same decision-making process that you now are faced with. They have faced the controversy from business communities, residents, and they have held firm. These cities had to offer up the best thoroughfares that their cities had to offer. We're talking about cities like Chicago with over millions in populations, all the way down to a small city like Poly, South Carolina, that decided to name a street and they only had 138 people. So you fall in between that spectrum. Now, as Mr. Walker had mentioned, safety, welfare are very important decisions, and we have addressed the Postal Service changes that will be necessary.
Mr. Stevens, if
yes.
I could stop you there.
Yes.
If you have additional comments from what Mr. Walker has already presented, that's what we would like to hear.
Oh, okay.
I believe he has previously covered the postal.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
What I'd like to, just to close and add, is that you, of course, are facing a situation where it is not unprecedented. You have history to use as a resource. He spoke of the heritage and the legacy that you now face to leave for our city, our future. And I just pray, and I was so relieved to hear. I didn't get a chance to hear the actual prayer, but to hear the gentleman who got up earlier and said he was so relieved and fulfilled that this meeting commenced with prayer.
Thank you.
So we just ask that with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, at this time, if we could have, let's see, we have Gracie Rubio, Robert Rubio. Are they here? Did either of you wish to address the body at this time? You could please state your name and address for the record.
I thank this council for allowing me, Roberto Rubio, 307 East Orange Avenue, El Centro, to present my opinions. The good people of this great country in the year 1607 decided to increase their wealth by caging human beings. The caged humans were shot, hung, whipped, and starved to death for not working fast enough. Also, for bonus, the greedy good people, their relatives and their friends would impregnate 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old cage girls and would cage or sell their own offspring. All this was accepted by the good people of those times for 250 years. Risking being burned, dismembered, hung, or whipped to death by the greedy good people, two escaped cage ladies, one named Harriet Tubman, who established the Underground Freedom Railroad, and the other Sojourner Truth, a great orator who spoke against caging humans. They were joined by many moral good people who also risked their lives by going against the punishable laws of the greedy human caging good people. My point here that sometimes moral good people have to go against good people that do not agree with them. Now we find ourselves together in the Centro City Council and the profit-making good people of 8th Street, together making history. So on this great day, I humbly come to you, the Centro City Council, to ask you to vote what you really feel in your hearts for once in your lifetime. Set aside your fears of the oligarchy people of El Centro, which of you have always favored for getting the remaining 30,000 citizens of El Centro. Be just as brave as Harriet, Sojourner, and their moral good people allies. Search your soul without fear of losing the votes, the donations of the profit-seeking good people of 8th Street, who, by the way, are against honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Please vote for renaming 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. Don't worry, the 8th Street profit-seeking good people will survive quickly, as they always do. And at the end, they will be very proud. Oh, by the way, as always, the good people always want to tell everyone what to do. Now they are suggesting naming Villa Road or Street to Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. That is like naming used toilet paper Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you, and God keep you strong and wise.
Gracie Rubio was wanting to speak or no? Thank you. Let's see here. Mr. John Hernandez, I'm sorry, I could not tell if you were speaking in favor or in opposition.
I couldn't tell either, that's why.
Yeah, check for me. Okay, did you want to?
I wanted to speak in favor.
Thank you, sir.
John Hernandez, 133 Sprighton. Honorable Mayor, council members, today you have a request before you that requires that you make a difficult political decision, one that will send a strong message to this community and to those outside of El Centro that are watching and waiting to see how you vote. Your vote on this request will define your legacy as a member of the El Centro City Council with the majority of the citizens of this community. As a council, you have an opportunity to be on the right side of history or to simply be a spectator as history passes by. The hopes and dreams of numerous generations of this city can be helped by a council that is in touch and in tune with the majority of this community. It is very clear by the low number of voters in this community that came out in the most recent election that some people are feeling a disconnect from their community and their elected representatives. Why such a big deal for naming a street, you might ask? The big deal is the enormous historical significance to our country and to the city of El Centro that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has brought to bear. The former mayor who once lived a stone's throw from the railroad tracks that have for over 100 years divided El Centro's east from west can relate to the historical significance of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to El Centro's black, brown, and east side community. El Centro's population has meshed and transformed into a multicultural community where 8th Street now sits in the center of the hub of activity for El Centro and is ideal as a street by which to honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Honoring his legacy by naming 8th Street after the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. sends a strong message of renewal for the hope of keeping the dream alive. The costs to the city and to the businesses are excessive, you might say. However, to the citizens that have lived in this community before and after the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and who have contributed to the coffers over past generations feel that the bill has been paid. The interest has accrued, and it's the city's turn to pay dividends and at least give people hope and a sense of pride by voting for change, a change from aid to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This indeed is a vote that money can't buy. However, it is a vote that history will judge you by. Thank you.
Have Mr. Albert Newton, followed by Mr. Walter Beasley, followed by Marva Walker, please.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, my name is Albert Newton, and I live at 178 West Orange Street, El Centro. I've been a resident of El Centro for 64 years, and I've seen a lot of changes come about in the city of El Centro. I heard something about a fire engine, old number 4. I love that engine. I had a lot of opportunities to work with it, being a battalion chief in the El Centro Fire Department. I also heard a report, something about El Centro Regional Hospital. I recall when it was El Centro Community Hospital, and members or someone solicited the neighborhood for funds to begin construction of the El Centro Community Hospital. I also recall a little high school and a college on the east side of El Centro that I attended because we were not allowed to intermingle and to associate with the other side until much later. I've seen a lot of good changes. I've seen some changes that were not so good also. I'm here to sanction the approval of the name change from from 8th Street to Martin Luther King Drive in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., and the legacy lives on. The man paid a price for what he got and what we received. Not only for the United States, but the whole country benefited from his legacy and the things that he brought about. The change has been significant. I speak from the bottom of my heart, and I think that this man by the name of Martin Luther King deserves this memorable legacy of street change, and not some street that's not recognizable to us as being significant in the change and the memories that he has made to us, but to give the best that we have in recognition of the legacy and the life that he lived and for what he did for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Walter Beasley.
evening. I want to thank the council for allowing me a chance to share with you some of my feelings about changing the mere number 8 to a man as legendary as Dr. King. It's not like someone did so much for El Centro, but it's a mere number, and I'm in favor of having it changed. I'm Walter Beasley. I live at 310 Magnolia Avenue in El Centro, which is 2 blocks from Villa, which is suggested as a change, which in my opinion is a disgrace. If you would go out and take a look, Mr. Walker presented that to you. He was not exaggerating. It is a disgrace to put a name such as that on a street like Villa. I'd like to start my presentation with a parable. And if you relate to Nazi Germany, I'd like to just say that they came and they took away the leaders. They came and they took away the ministers. They came and they took away the teachers. And then they came, and at the time, when they took away the leaders, no one said anything. When they took away the ministers, no one said anything. When they took away the teachers, no one said anything. Then they came and took me away, and no one said anything. Well, Dr. King, an apostle of peace, did stand up, and he spoke out, and a lot of people joined him and also followed him. And as we look back through history, Dr. King did so much to help this country. In Nazi Germany, had people worn yellow bands in protest of what this madman was doing, perhaps they would have saved 6 million Jews. But Dr. King did stand up, and he spoke out. A lot of people would say, and living out here, people are removed from what was happening in the South, some of them, and they would say, just another, they're just complaining again. That's not really happening. It's not that bad. But national TV, as you could see, people being put upon by police dogs, washed down, knocked down by fire hoses, beaten with nightsticks. These things became a reality. And a lot of people that were educated, and they can say, hey, wait a minute, these people are our people. This is the United States, and they have rights. And Dr. King is trying to help get those. And as he passed through that, he got thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to back him. And I'm here, one of them, to speak in favor of that. I was an elementary teacher. I had the honor of doing Martin Luther King several presentations. Kids had no idea what had happened, but it was an enlightenment and an honor for me. He did a lot to help the civil rights movement. But if you are here and you pass through the South, if you were not black or a minority or brown, you had no idea what was going on because the whole South was open to you. You could stop wherever you wanted to, eat where you wanted to, sit where you wanted to, ride the buses, the trains. But I was born in the South, raised in El Centro, and like Mr. Newton, we both went to school on the east side. We were not allowed to go across the tracks to schools. The books we got, we had to erase the names out of the books of the people who had them before so that we could use them. And with that in mind, we were allowed to go across and to go to school later. But with the civil rights movement, everyone has a chance to go to the schools, to live in motels that they can afford and eat in places that they can. So he was trying to help the civil rights of the people, and this he did. And I applaud the man for that. It ultimately cost him his life. But Dr. King, and as you travel through the South, as we did, you could see the change in attitude of the people. I was born in Arkansas. I go back for a reunion every once in a while. I remember going back in the 50s and stopping by a service station to get a drink of water, and it was hot. And here's the boy, hey boy, you know better than to drink out of that fountain. And I said, well, what's wrong with that? The water's running. You get you that glass over there. These are the things that people like Dr. King put up with and also brought about a change. So I rise in support of changing 8th Street to Dr. King Drive. Thank you.
Mr. Beasley.
My name is Marva Walker. I live at 910 North Oak Avenue here in El Centro. protocol has been established. I relegate my time to Mr. Walker if needed.
Thank you. Mr. Danny Santillan?
Danny Santillan, 826 Beach Avenue, Calexico. In October of 1976, I moved to Calexico from Brawley at the age of 31. Soon after, I started working for the Calexico Community Action Council. One of the proposals during the time that I was with the Community Action Council was to build the Calexico Industrial Park, which is now a reality. And one of the streets at the Calexico Industrial Park is named after Dr. Martin Luther King. Of course, that was a new street, so there wasn't that much fuss about it. But within a year after the death of Cesar Chavez, Railroad Boulevard was renamed after Cesar Chavez, and there was no city committee. There were no concerned citizens. This came just from the city council members. Motion was made, second, and it passed unanimously. Years later, matter of fact, I can't remember exactly when, but a group of East Side citizens in Brawley, along with Jose Lopez, the director of Campesinos Unidos, and myself, who were Calexico residents, we went before the Brawley City Council just to ask, and in the public comments, just to ask what the procedure, what were the requirements. And we told our intentions that we wanted to rename 10th Street Cesar Chavez, and the reasons why. And to our surprise and shock, they took an action. They took action that night, and the motion was made and seconded, and it was approved. So the moral to my presentation, and the point is that where there's a will, there's a way. Sí se puede. Yes, it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eric Reyes.
Good evening. Eric Reyes, 541 Main Street in Brawley, representing Institute for Socioeconomic Justice. We've been here. I'm part of the commission with Mr. Walker, Mr. Stevens. We went door to door on the required places we were asked to, and we came before the administrative meeting as well. And at that time, all of the options, which I believe were presented, I came a little bit late, but I believe those options were here, and also some of the reasons as to why people felt they should not be named. Cost was one of them. And I ask you, and also some of the business people did spoke up about people know where their business is. It's on 8th Street, branding issues and so on about their business and so on. Those are all legitimate reasons for you to consider. But at the same time, the cost of something, which can be taken care of in time, if given the opportunity, is something also to consider for the commission to be able to consider once you have made your decision. Don't base your decision solely on cost. There's so many other options, so many ways to get around that. And also the business people who are opposed to it, because of so many people know where their business is, and 8th Street is related to it. They're selling themselves short. You know, they're excellent business people. I know they'll be able to still sell their goods and their services whether it's Dr. Martin Luther King or any other name. I think the issue here is that as you come here before us as the public, and you as City Council, we want you to stand on your principles of how you came to be where you are today, professionally, personally, and in particular serving the public. There are principles that are American, that Dr. King promulgated, lived up, and died for, that you guys all stand for, without a doubt, in your own personal way. Take that into account when you make the decision. Allow your conscience and your heart to decide how you're going to do this and how you have lived your life and what those things mean. And yes, that street is significant for many reasons, as Mr. Walker, Mr. Stevens, and Mr. Yoon spoke. There are many, many symbolic, significant reasons for that particular street. The entrance from the north and the south, the crossway of Main Street is a major thoroughfare of El Centro, where Dr. King belongs, not on a side street, not a street that will be rehabbed later, or a street that will come later. This is your opportunity to make something right. And there is no greater opportunity for someone who has striven, as all of you have striven, to succeed and make your mark in your community as today. Thank you.
Mr. Richard Fierro. I believe this is the last speaker on the proponent side. Is there anyone else that was going to speak? Mr. Layton, do you have your speaker slip ready? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Honorable Mayor and Council, my name is Richard Fierro. I reside at 385 Eucalyptus Avenue in El Centro. I come here tonight to urging you, the Council, to rename 8th Street to Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. I disagree with VIA, the whole concept of VIA, disagree with it, and no disrespect to VIA residents. This will be an honor for the city of El Centro to do so, as many other cities throughout California and other states have done. You would only have to look at yourselves to see how far we have come in this city and throughout our nation. Everyone has benefited from the struggles of Dr. Martin Luther King, and others have done to make change in this country. Many of them have paid the ultimate sacrifice as Dr. King, so we could achieve our goals in life. Myself, I benefit through the whole movement of this change. I was able to retire at 58. I'm older now, but I also have 2 children. One graduated from UC Berkeley, Bolt. I have another son who was an Army Major, 4th Infantry. So I believe that all this is because of what Martin Luther King brought to all of us. It didn't just help one segment of the population, it helped all the segments. So I urge you to vote yes on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Layton, and I believe, do you require one of these for him? Okay, thank you. After Mr. Layton speaks, we are going to take a 5-minute recess.
My name is John Layton, 1731 Sandalwood. I didn't intend to speak tonight, and I'll make it very quick, but I just wanted to say that after listening to the speakers tonight, and after thinking about this a great deal, I believe that a change is necessary. I would appreciate your vote for that change this evening. If that doesn't happen, I think that the speakers have made a point that something needs to happen, and something more significant than some of the things that have been offered at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Layton. We will reconvene at 11:45. 7, and that doesn't include John.
But still, I think that's not bad. We've gone through more than that already.
We're going to go ahead and get started again, please, if you could take your seats. Thank you. The first item that we would like to address, at the break I was approached by staff, and staff has requested the opportunity for a clarification. And so I will turn it back to Ms. Viacani.
Thank you. One of the alternatives that we discussed was the renaming of Villa. And what the alternative would be, this is Imperial Avenue. There's a dead end right here, so it would be the west side from Imperial Avenue to La Boucherie. And then the future development of Las Aldeas will come in, so Villa would be extended to the west, and it would be a major thoroughfare to Las Aldeas subdivision. The intent was not to go east, I'm sorry.
And that alternative was discussed at the planning?
Yes, and
Commission
also
hearing?
that's one of the analysis that staff conducted to ensure that if we can, I'm sorry, okay, if you see that 14 properties along the western segment would be affected, and 29 properties along the eastern segment, but the original intent was to go to the western segment.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Madam
Yes.
Mayor, I have a question. In that particular vicinity, in that neighborhood, if you will, is that the Martin Luther King school site?
That's correct. Okay. And there's just a few homes facing, maybe a couple of homes facing apartment units facing Villa.
Thank you, Ms. Viacani. At this time, we are going to ask some of the speakers, I believe I have 7 or 8 slips, to come forward. If we could start, please, with Mr. Don Setliff. Nope, not here. We'll note opposition to the recommendation, 540 South 8th Street. He's an MD? Did I get that wrong? Okay, note the opposition. Mr. David West. We'll follow that with Mr. Ed Snively and Mr. Orlando Foote, please. Mr. West.
Good evening. My name is David West, and I own the property at 302 North 8th Street, in which I have a business, David H. West Insurance Services. I also rent out the front property to another business, and I oppose the changing of the name, not because it's Dr. King, because he's a great man and we should honor him in some way. But from my point of view, the expense to me, when, I guess I have a problem, to be honest with you, when other citizens, whether people that signed that petition were people of El Centro, San Diego, Yuma, Calexico, Brawley, are going to sign a petition to come and spend my money. I mean, I'm only one person, but I matter too. And I don't think people have the right to do that. You know, I just feel that they need to take a look at my needs. No one came and asked me. They did come to my office, I found out much later. 2 of my staff signed up. They put 302 North 8th Street as their address, or that's where they work at. They have no opportunity to make decisions for my office. The business in front also signed. They have no opportunity to make a decision for my business. And it's not their residence address either. So there's 3 names that those people, having talked to them afterward and explained to them what the cost would be to the business, said had the petition noted the cost to the business, they would not have signed it. So I just simply say that I'm opposed to it. I wish we could honor his name in some other way, but I matter. I have a voice. I'm only one person, but I think people need to ask me before they want to spend my money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Ed Snively.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Ed Snively, 314 North 8th and El Centro, where I have my business. 1150 Glenwood Drive is my residence. I'm opposed to this, and I think it gets back to the basics of the original presentation. If you look at the presentation made at the Administrative Committee, one of the key things in this whole city policy, and if I could digress a moment, I would hope whatever motion you make, that you add an addendum to your motion that request that staff provide you with a better policy, because this has been confusing from the start, both, I think, for the proponents and the opponents of this measure. In particular, a key element, and this was left out by the proponents to the measure, a key element clearly stated in the graphic put up by your planning department, is the majority of the people along 8th Street who have a vested interest, either residents or businesses. No one, as a proponent this evening, came forward and gave you an 8th Street address. And I think that the idea and the original intent of the council was that the people who are going to be directly affected should have a voice. That's the democratic way. And there needs to be a policy in place where the city can actually contact the people when this sort of issue comes up and get a fair representation of the thought process of the people who are going to be affected. Now, it may seem like a small matter as far as something financial to those who are proposing this change. For my small business, the cost is $7,000. It escalates up for other businesses along 8th Street. We're in the middle of a recession. If you don't have a job, this is a depression. Your city was just hit with a $750,000 takeaway. I don't know where you're going to find that money. So these are not good times, as highlighted by the gentleman with the Fair Housing Unit that started off the program in your public comment section. Things are not good out there. And this has nothing to do with Dr. Martin Luther King. We said this at the administrative hearing. We said it at the Planning Commission. There is no one who opposes this who doesn't feel that Dr. Martin Luther King was a great man and needs to be honored. And I so appreciated your comments about the city taking the steps necessary to do that. I think it's vital. We'll all support it. But this does not have the support of the majority. Not even one person has come from 8th Street to speak in favor of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Orlando Foote, please.
Good evening. My name is Lanny Foote. I'm an attorney here in El Centro. I live at 450 South Sunset Street, or Drive, pardon me, in the city of El Centro. I made some comments at the Planning Commission meeting, and I'm going to not repeat those comments. I will say, and I will congratulate the proponents for a much more measured, much better thought out presentation than we heard at the Planning Commission level. It has not changed my view of what's going on here. My view is that this is a controversy. It is symbolic. It was born in the crucible of conflict. And its purpose is not to achieve recognition for one of the greatest contributors to the way our modern society exists that has been among us in the last century. It is intended to divide. It is intended to make a statement. It is intended to communicate in our way or the highway approach. And I would request that the council consider it. Having said all that, I do not believe that that a symbolic effort such as this should undergo the type of scrutiny that is established by a set of rules that, and I agree with Mr. Snively, those rules need work. They really do. But we should not have had to go through the expense of basically developing an entire presentation by staff in order to foster this effort. The effort is not intended to achieve a legitimate goal other than as a symbolic, much as I hate to say it, in-your-face effort on the part of a group of people that may well be sincere, but I fear that the main objective is to make a statement. And I'm sorry, I disagree with that statement. I'm not embarrassed by it. I simply disagree with it. So I encourage you to vote your conscience I guess I'm part of the, by the way, I guess I'm honored to be part of the oligarchy. I don't know, I do know what that word means. I've never associated myself with that. I've been called an elitist, I've been called any number of things, but never a member of an oligarchy. So thank you very much for that. But seriously, please consider the effect and the impact that this has on an effort that, as I say, is not born in the spirit of Dr. King, but is born in the spirit of confrontation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foote. Mr. Bob Schell?
Madam Mayor, fellow council members. My name is Robert Schell, and I live at 2580 Holt Road in Holtville. I have a business at 380 North 8th Street with several tenants. I'm here to naturally to oppose this, and I would hope that you would support the Planning Commission's ruling on this for the reasons that they gave. I've owned this property for my wife and I for 35 years, and in those 35 years we paid, you know, taxes, water, sewer, and maintain our building as best as our ability. And we have good tenants, and I hope that you don't impose a burden to our tenants to go through this kind of name change for the reasons that some of these people want. And so I would strongly urge you not to do this. You know, 8th Street is a good name. You know, it's not confusing. People can find it easily. It's non-political, and I think that's the way I'd like to keep it. To, you know, change the name would create a burden on the people living and doing business on 8th Street, and also to the city of El Centro, which really in this economic times should not undertake expenses of this, and I think we can do a lot better in other places spending city money. And I think these people seeking to do these name changes should be more attuned to the cost involved. Maybe if they had to pay these expenses, maybe they wouldn't be so adamant about doing these things, and that's my opinion, and I hope that you guys go along with the Planning Commission. And at that Planning Commission, there was only 2 people that spoke in favor of the name change. And all the rest of us, you know, we spoke, opposed it, and all that opposed it had businesses or lived on 8th Street. And none of the people that came in favor of it had any business or lived on 8th Street. So please keep that in mind, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Schell. We have 2 additional Shells. Will they be speaking? Dax or Carmen? Okay. Want to flip a coin, see who goes next? Very good. All right. Good choice.
Hello. Honorable Mayor, City Council members. My name is Carmen Arnice Chell. And I was going to demand equal time, but I thought that would be kind of crass. As a descendant, I'm going to give you guys one more option. You've talked about naming all these different options. I'm a direct descendant of old Californios. My family's been here for over 200 years in California. And I think if we want to name it after somebody who actually had something to do with Imperial Valley, you know, we could name it after Juan Bautista de Anza. So that's another option. But that's not what I came here to speak about. What I really came here to speak about is that I started out really opposing this because this inflicts a tremendous cost on businesses and people that are having a horrific time. You know, people walk up and they think that they should just do whatever, and it costs them nothing. But as we got further onto this, things happened. And I really began to oppose it because of the use of intimidation tactics. and threats to those who oppose this project, those to our safety and our welfare. And I am horrified, absolutely horrified, that Mr. Donald Walker would attempt to shake down, okay, the people on 8th Street by telling us it's time for the businesses to kick in from from all their gainful years. I'm stunned. I can't believe people talk like that. I would hope that you would not reward these tactics. And I would hope that you would not bow to runaway political correctness and force your vote in favor while ignoring the taxpayers who foot the bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shell. Is there anyone else that is going to want to speak, or will Mr. Shell be our last speaker in opposition to the renaming? Mr. Edney. Okay, Mr. Shell, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members and fellow residents of El Centro. My name is Dax Shell. I have an MBA, and I'm a candidate for the Doctor of Business Administration. I prepared a statement regarding what the mission of business is in our society, what it does for society. As Louis Banks, who was the former managing editor of Fortune and Time magazine and contributor in Harvard Business Review, stated, many people today see business as having exploited the environment, as well as its workers, and consequently, as having contributed to today's economic and social crisis. Many people state that businesses need to pay up, pay your fair share, that business only looks out for itself and its owners. Lewis further then stated, these people could not be further from the truth. Business is that which ensures the creation of new wealth and product, new conceptual approaches to major problems, reinforcement of individual and humanist values, and a worthy future for this unique civilization. Let us not forget that it's business that fuels the local economy, with taxes it pays and the wages it pays. Business hires our mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. Business is the institution that breathes hope into the lives of our community of residents. Business provides the income for our city's residents to spend at our city's businesses, charity events, and public programs. Business is who sponsors many extracurricular programs that make our city residents happy. The city's next major function is the Tamale Fiesta and seasonal tree lighting event, which has 34 business sponsors that I counted. The question is, if only 33 businesses could contribute to this event, would there have been enough capital to even hold the event? When people do not have work because they cannot find it or because they have been laid off, something in them dies, a self-worth, until it's filled again with the hope that a new job brings. Julian Coing, a famous copywriter, said this about business. Business is the great aggregator and articulator of our interests, the broker of our hopes, the builder of our road to riches, both tangible and spiritual. 150 years ago, a French lawyer and sociologist, Alexis de Tocqueville, stated what he believed to be the driving force of American life. This is the driving force. He stated, "Prosperity and spirit of enterprise seem to be the distinctive characteristics of the American race." Businesses in El Centro is suffering in this economy, and even our omnipotent utility is going to be laying off employees. During times of turmoil, business must reduce its expenses and debt and then ride out the poor economy or go out of business. To incur an additional burden of expense by changing the name of 8th Street might be too much for some businesses to bear. Some might say, good. They deserve not to be in business because of the poor management practices that they've instituted. They could be right. But now you have city residents out of work. These residents now have to tell their families and friends that they are out of work, and where there is no work, there is usually no hope. The city's mission statement states that you are to strengthen and maintain a well-trained, responsive, and courteous workforce, and prudently manage the city's financial resources and provide for adequate reserves. However, if the name change passes and business must lay off or close because of the additional burden it must now carry, how are you fulfilling your very own city's mission statement? Your city tax base is now lessened, and you have failed to maintain the city's workforce. If this name change passes, it will cause a misalignment in our city's mission. The city's mission statement reflects the direction you wish to take our city. Please, I ask you, do not take the city in the wrong direction. Do not allow this name change to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edney. Mr. Edney will be our last speaker, and then we will return it to council.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I suppose coming up here is both a little frustrating and a little saddening. And I think it's unfortunate that this process has come to a point where what we've heard here sitting as members of this community is a division. And isn't the goal of this council and this city over the last many years to unite this city in its efforts to benefit its community? And we've heard very dramatic and emotional testimony from the proponents, and we certainly understand the reasonings that they provide and the emotion that they have. What we've also heard from the opponents is some very dramatic, practical problems, issues. And it saddens me that we didn't take a different approach to this. This council has worked for a number of years in a collaborative approach by developing task force, working with its community on a number of variety of items, whether it be the location for the new senior center, whether it be the recently approved Measure G, in which numbers of the council participated with members of the community. Collaborative approach to make a recommendation to this council. I concern myself as a council member often about our choices that we have to make every time an issue comes before us. And what is the impact it is to our community, positive and negative. Personally, I'm always concerned about making an impact of a financial nature to a community based on our own emotional wins. Of 1,000 properties in Imperial County. I have hundreds of signs, and they're always being stolen, ripped off, vandalized, whatnot. So today she comes into my office, she says, I got a quote from a local vendor for 5 new signs, $498. Now, if you want to just estimate how many signs I have and how many signs I will have to replace for this one issue, That doesn't preclude all the marketing materials we have for the numerous properties that we manage. Doesn't include the internet access that we have for the properties. It doesn't include any of that. This is a cost in a very difficult environment. It's very easy for someone who doesn't own a business to say, pony on up. Now, you've heard from members of the business community here. I think most of you know these business communities. They're some of the most generous people in this community. They donate their money to all kinds of organizations. They donate their time. For someone to suggest that they're not giving back to this community, I think is an insult. Lastly, I would make a recommendation. The mayor at the beginning of this meeting proposed an alternative resolution, and I would urge the council to very much consider that. Reject this application, agree as a council to appoint a task force, work with the members of this community, appropriate, very dignified, very distinguished memorial to Dr. King. It can be done. Everything we've done on this council in the last 10 years has been in that collaborative nature. This was not done in that way. And you can see it by the divide. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. There is a divide. There is concern. There's a better way to do this and a better way for us to come together as a community. I hope you take that under consideration. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Now going to return this item to council. Is there someone that would like to start the comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would certainly start. I appreciate each individual here tonight. I look out into this audience, I see friends, neighbors, fellow churchgoers, and individuals that have partnered with me on various political campaigns. I also see a great deal of passion, or I hear the passion rather. I hear frustration, but most of all, what I hear is an element of confusion. A confusion as to whether or not this is the right time to actually move forward on naming a street for Dr. Martin Luther King. There are those who would have us believe that this is an inappropriate thing to do. Inappropriate perhaps because of cost. Inappropriate perhaps because we have not set aside time to adequately think through the process as to what this was actually going to do in a community of less than 50,000. There are those who have identified myself and Mr. Solomon and our former mayor, Mr. Du Bois McGee, as direct descendants, if you will, and beneficiaries of some of Dr. King's efforts. I certainly do not shy away from that. I believe that, yes, the things that Dr. King stood for have certainly been a benefit for me. But I'm not here to talk about that. And I'm certainly not here to question the integrity or the validity of the statements that were being made by those who were in favor or those who were in opposition. But rather, I want to try and remove the emotion and the passion from the discussion and look at this as purely policy. Now, that's not going to be an easy task, because for the last hour and a half, we have had a lot of passion fill this room. But if we were to look at this as policy and began to look and call to question whether or not the policy we currently have was a little bit confusing for both sides of this issue. The individuals that are on and fronting 8th Street, the businesses and the residents, certainly they are great stakeholders, and their views registered very strong. The individuals who are in favor of naming or renaming certainly have strong opinions as well. So now the question is for this council to try to provide something of balance. Earlier on, when the mayor gave the opening comments as to what was before us, and I then piggybacked upon her comments as related to a resolution. The one resolution we have with the recommendation from our staff through the Planning Commission is to deny. A second resolution sitting before us is to deny and then provide an opportunity for some additional dialogue to take place, either in the form of a task force or an ad hoc committee, to work with the community to see whether or not we can identify a suitable location, street, or building that might be reflective of the honor that Dr. King so dearly deserved. I piggybacked on that and offered a different option. I want to, again, restate that even though I see individuals in this audience who live on the north of 8th Street, I'm looking at a letter from a family member on that north of 8th Street, or two letters, if you will, who were not in favor of a street change. But I think that if we were to have the proponents give some thought, I'm not quite sure if Mr. Walker in his opening statements truly meant what he said when he emphatically stated, and perhaps, Madam Mayor, we can give him a chance to clarify with the 60 seconds to clarify, if he truly meant he emphatically wanted to see 8th Street named without any consideration for anything other than that. Because the idea that I would like to have the proponents consider, which would require an amendment to their application, if you will, is 8th Street north of Adams to our city limits. And for a variety of reasons. Granted, it does have some residential individuals who front 8th Street. We also have the school and the daycare center and Pico Market. But our city has invested millions of dollars in upgrading the northern portion of that street. It will not be too long from now that we will see a 72-unit housing establishment being built in that area. And closer yet, as far as time is concerned, we will see that Bradshaw will be punched through. Our growth is heading in that particular direction. I believe 8th Street north of Adams will become a major thoroughfare. However, if that proposal or that idea does not resonate with the proponents of the project, then I would, at least at this point, like to see if Mr. Walker or his designee would like to have 60 seconds to clarify if they were adamantly concerned about the entire portion of 8th Street.
Mr. Walker, are you in a position to address that now?
Thank you. In listening to the overall of what's happening, of what's happened this evening, it appeals to me, and I believe the Commission inquiry, it would appeal to them on the suggestion that City Council woman Mrs. Sanders has offered, the alternative. Yes, we do want 8th Street. But to kill all of why we are here this evening would be sad. And I think that the alternative of going south and north as an amendment is feasible.
I'm
Feasible.
sorry, it's feasible.
Yes.
Okay. Having said that, thank you, Mr. Walker. Having said that, Madam Mayor, now I'm not sure if this is something that the council now agrees with. Keeping in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is just one council member's idea. This does not in any way, and let me use a very colloquial term, short circuit a process. A process would still need to take place as it relates to a time factor. There will still need to be some expenditure of funds because there will still be some signage that will be required. We will still need to engage a dialogue with the school district because of the school site and some of the residents that are there. This is in no way to suggest this will be short-circuited. I want to make sure that that is clearly understood before you leave this room. Now, to the flip side of those who are 8th Street from Adams Avenue south, for those businesses that have raised some major concerns as it relates to their cost, I think this council, we heard you, and we understand the dilemma in today's economic environment this would place you in. And it is for this reason that my particular suggestion is coming forward, trying to make sure that if we are going to be moving in this direction, that we would be able to do so with the least amount of disruption, the least cost to the businesses, and at the same time address something that is in my mind has a great deal of potential of being doable. But again, I want to clarify and restate, this is in no way going to short-circuit a process. Now, if I may continue, Madam Mayor, I've taken some liberties as a council member, and I have talked to agents at the Postal Service. I wasn't able to speak to the postmaster, but I did speak to someone in authority. I was led to believe that whatever a street may be named, they will deliver the mail. I also did my own little, if I can use the term, sidewalk survey. I called around in some neighboring towns and cities to determine some of the difficulties they may have experienced as they were trying to wrestle with a similar situation. And I found that that was very, very difficult in many instances. But they were able to get it accomplished because there was, as my colleague who chose and it was suggested by the city attorney that he sit on the sideline on this one, as Mr. Edney has suggested. This council has taken a great deal of effort to try and work from a collaborative standpoint. At no time do we want our city or our citizens to think that we do not hear each and every one of your concerns. Even as we hear your concerns, we too have certain limitations to help you meet them. Some of our areas and limitations are our budget. We too have some of the difficulties, and some of the proponents or some of the individuals who were opponents wrestled with that and identified that for us. That in any way does not preclude us from hearing what you're saying and validate the worthiness of Dr. King. Through all of the discussion here tonight, I didn't hear anyone say that Dr. King was not a worthy recipient of something. I didn't hear that comment. Instead, what I heard was that something 8th Street. So having that, Madam Mayor, I believe is Mr. Walker has said he's in agreement with amendment that we may have something that we could redirect to staff. First, let me ask a few questions, if I may. I need to ask some questions of the city attorney. Mr. Hernandez, with this item having come before the Planning Commission, and what the Planning Commission was looking at would be slightly different than what I am suggesting and possible as an amendment, would it need to go back to the Planning Commission? This is a process question, sir.
Well, the policy is adopted by the City Council.
Okay.
It's a City Council policy. It's not mandated by state law or any other state requirement. So
Okay.
typically, if a Planning Commission has not considered an alternative under planning law, those matters would have to be referred back to the Planning Commission. Since this is not purely a planning matter, but really a recommendation with regard to a street name which is not covered by planning law, if you were to have an alternative, it's your prerogative to either refer it back for their recommendation or to decide without their recommendation.
Okay. Well, then, having heard that comment, Madam Mayor, I would suggest that this would be reviewed by going back to staff administrative committee. We will look at certain signages and the cost from H Street north of Adams. Determine not only the cost of those particular signs, any type of cost that may be associated with by staff. I had been given some figures, and I'm not sure if the figures that I computed, I'm not sure if those are figures that are approximate, and so I don't want to put those on the table because I don't want to mislead anyone with these numbers. I would prefer that staff really research that. And so if that's the case, then we will still have some work to do. So if this is something that the council is amenable to, the proponent seems to be amenable to, and if there's anyone on the opposing side that would like to speak to you don't want to hear that?
No.
Okay.
No.
The mayor is in, has the...
I think I would like to hear what the
Okay.
other members of the council would
Okay.
propose, Ms. Sanders. Did you have some additional comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Solomon?
Okay. First of all, let me thank Donald and Gary for carrying the bulk of the conversation on this. I remember Donald standing up at a meeting that I was at saying that we need to have a Dr. Martin Luther King Street. So I appreciate your passion, the both of you. I appreciate the fact that you have carried it to this point. Even though you have received some no's along the way, you have still been pushing, and I appreciate that. Before I do anything else, I would like to really address this policy before I get into what I want to say. This City of El Centro policy for naming city property and streets, I really do believe needs to be redone again. I think we need to take a real good look at this because it is very confusing, and it doesn't lay out the plan for naming this as as clear as it possibly should be. So I would like for this time around to go to the city attorney and have him take a look at this, and let's see if we can't put something together that really is structured for name changes from this point on, so that we could be a little clear about that. The other thing that I would like to mention about this before I go on is after looking at this, I would also like to think about the number of committees that we have to go through. If it is a non-power street, I mean a small street, do we have to have the administrative committee, the planning commission, and the city council? Maybe for a smaller street, we only need 2. If it's a major street, then maybe we do need 3 that we can take a look at. But I would hope that we could at least consider something like that as we go further with the policies for naming streets. I think that what Mrs. Sanders has put on the table is very appealing to me. I think the thing that I liked about it as I drove down 8th Street, I'm more inclined to go south from, what was the street that you used for going south? Ross.
I use Ross.
Ross. I would be willing to even put that in as a priority of mine. Mrs. Sanders has mentioned north, but I think south is also something that is pleasing to me.
Okay.
The other thing is, I have also looked around to find out, how other cities have done this. And I've come up with the conclusion that if people are not at least working together in their efforts, that we have this huge division, as I've seen here tonight, and honestly, I was surprised. I was surprised because it is really not the way this council, and I think Mr. Edney has said that, this is really not the way this council has been conducting business in the 4 years that I have been here, where we've had this much division. And I think that we need to do something that brings that in, that allows us to work together to accomplish this. Because the bottom line to all of this is Dr. King would not have wanted a fight in his name, over his name, to be carried into bad blood that goes on from that point on. I think we have an opportunity to work together with this. I think that we can do this. It is time to have a street with his name, and I think we have a chance to maybe pull this together, and I would certainly like for us to try. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Mr. Silva?
Well, this is one of those, this reminds me of maybe 10 years ago or so when I happened to be in the El Centro Elementary School District and with the opening of the Sunflower School. And at the time, my attempts to have the school named Cesar Chavez Elementary School. And the division that created. And I have to compliment the people here and that on the nature of the comments that were made, the civility of the procedures, and the dialogue that took place. I think that the council takes your issues, your comments seriously. I don't believe, and I've never been someone that proposes that for all the decisions that we make, that you have to have a unanimous vote. I think that even within the council, division is good. It reflects that each of us have our own opinions, but I respect the council in that we respect the opinions that we have. I concur that the legacy and the contributions that were made by Dr. King are respected and honored by everyone in this room. And it's difficult for me because most of the people that spoke today, I've known in some capacity or another, some of them for a long time, like Mr. Hernandez, like Mr. West. And your opinions, again, to me are very, very important. I like for the council, I kind of like to take the recommendation that was made by Mr. Edney, and that I think that following that recommendation, it achieves both, it encompasses and embraces both suggestions that were made by Ms. Sanders as well, and that by taking the recommendation from the council, denying the action, but at the same time developing a mechanism for both groups, for all groups to get involved and come up with a recommendation that works for everyone. And that could still be naming the street after Dr. King. That might be north of Adams or south of Ross. Or perhaps there may be another recommendation that gives due honor that we may not be thinking about right now. And I believe that the action that is being recommended by staff will achieve that. I hope, though, that as we take a look at this, and I do believe that something will be done to honor Dr. King, that at the same time, we either concurrently or soon thereafter, we look at the same mechanism to provide and respect the memory of Cesar Chavez just as well. Because I think that's another individual that had a direct impact on the lives of many of the citizens here, specifically here in Imperial County. So at one point in time, I would like for the community to get together as well and come up with something that will also honor Chavez's memory. So, Mr. Hernandez, if we were to adopt a resolution that was presented as an option where we would deny this action, but at the same time create an avenue for discussion to come back to the council, I presume that would encompass and would include the discussion that Mrs. Sanders suggested.
Well, I believe if the alternative resolution that is on your dais and
Correct.
changes made there, then I think you're free to do and create and fashion whatever kind of appropriate commemorative of Dr. King as you see fit, and working with the community. Apparently, that sure appears to be where you're headed.
Correct.
Thank you. It was Mr. Reyes, I think, who mentioned that we need to look to our principles and we need to look at how we have lived our lives and what we've been taught. My father was a policeman in Seattle for many years. And what I was taught was to follow the rules, to do what is fair, and my rights pretty much end when they're going to have a negative impact on someone else. I've been pretty saddened by this process. It has been divisive at a time when, as we talked about at the reorganization tonight, we must come together as a council, as staff, and as a community. We can't rely on Sacramento. Certainly can't rely on Washington, D.C. This is not a time for us to be divided by an issue that we must come together and be united on the one thing that we all agree about, and that is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a man deserving of honor. But what is that legacy, and how is it that we honor his legacy? And the reason I'm proposing this alternative resolution is because I think we're thinking too small. All we've talked about tonight is naming a street or a building or a location. To me, there are so many other ways we could honor his legacy. Mr. Layton, you're a teacher. It seems to me that one of the things that we want is for the legacy of our heroes to live on in our children. It seems to me that one of the ways the City Council could pledge its support and commitment to honoring Dr. Martin Luther King is to participate with much more enthusiasm and attention in honoring Dr. Martin Luther King on a day set aside for that as a federal holiday. We have the opportunity to partner with our schools for contests. We could have a contest on write me an essay on what it is that Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy means to you. I just think we're limiting ourselves by saying this street holds as much meaning as having a child understand and live the legacy of Dr. King. I think we're thinking too small. And that's why I would like us not to get too far afield with perhaps selecting the location, whether it be the north section of 8th Street or the south section of 8th Street. But I also, to Mr. Silva's point, I don't want us to limit ourselves to the legacy of Dr. King, because we will be right back here in short order looking for the appropriate way for us to honor and respect Cesar Chavez. For that reason, I am hoping for council support for we form either an ad hoc committee or a task force to meet with interested community members to come up with an idea as to how best to honor our heroes. Let's put our thinking caps on. Let's throw just the conventional wisdom out the door. Let's open up some bigger and better ideas that are truly worthy of these heroes. At this point, what I would like to do is seek a motion by council as to how we move forward with the resolution. Following that, we most definitely would like to form a task force to deal with policy revisions. Because the street naming policy is a policy which we control and direct, I think we need to be instrumental as a council in shaping what that policy looks like. So while the burden will fall to the city attorney's office for the document, we need to be the ones that set the tone as to what that document says. So at this point, I'm going to conclude my comments with thanking all of you for participating in this process, for caring enough about the issue to be here and to let your voice be heard. We have options. We have 3 resolutions before us. As Ms. Villacana started the presentation, we have an option to approve the petition.
Okay.
We have an option to deny the petition. We have an option to delay taking action. We also have an option to deny the petition, but adopt a resolution that adds that the City Council hereby pledges its support and commitment to work with the community in identifying an enduring and fitting memorial to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy.
Okay, my question, and maybe you can answer for me, is that does this mean, what you're telling is that we start over from the ground zero and the streets are off the board?
No, nothing's off the board. What I'm saying is that we open the door to additional ideas, whether that be north, whether that be south, whether that be the adult center, whether there are no limits as to what is under consideration.
Let's talk about that a little bit, if we may. I'd like to flesh that out, if I may. We talked about perhaps Dr. King's legacy and the benefit it would be to our youth and for generations yet to come. Schools are currently hosting Martin Luther King Day. Civic organizations, fraternal organizations are currently hosting Martin Luther King Day in El Centro. So in that regard, that is in place. What's not in place is anything that's memorializing it for posterity. Whether it be a street or a building or a combination of. Those are the things that are not in place. But we are celebrating, and they have marches, reenactment of his speech on our courthouse, on our courthouse steps. Activities take place at Buckland Park. Activities take place at almost every elementary school site. And in some instances, they take place on the high school sites. Young people are taught about Dr. King in certain homes. And as the individual who actually put in place the holiday for Dr. King, even after it was named such by President Reagan, President Reagan of the holiday did not include anything other than federal employees. Each individual jurisdiction needed to take that step to actually get that holiday in place. So what I would like for us to consider as we move in this direction, I really don't, I'm in a quandary, Mr. Hernandez. I'm not quite sure how to do what I would like to see us accomplish. I concur that we want to make sure that we do this in the most amenable way and to make sure that we have something that would be fitting Dr. King and his legacy. I also want to ensure those folks who are on both sides of this issue that they would have an opportunity for input in this process. So now this becomes not a policy question as much as it is a process question. If we were...
I'm sorry, but Ms. Sanders, I think that's,
well,
the policy though does talk about.
Okay, restate your comment for me.
Well, what I wanted to bring up, and I think this would be applicable to both of the ideas advanced by you and Mr. Solomon, is the policy provides the street name change on inhabited streets to be approved when there's a majority of the inhabitants that favor that action. That is what our policy provides.
Okay.
So it seems to me that a combination of city direction and outreach, we could certainly determine if there is a majority of inhabitants.
Well, it's already been determined tonight that the majority of the inhabitants on 8th Street
Well,
are
except
not
that
in favor.
I think that if we looked at your alternative with regard, because the majority of businesses, I believe, those that in opposition that spoke tonight, are located
Between
south.
Adams and Ross.
Right,
Mhm.
correct. So we talked earlier about outreach, and I think that there were comments made that some people felt excluded from the process, but this is our opportunity to do outreach for the specific street section that you're talking about, which I think is an excellent idea, especially given, as we know, where the growth in City of El Centro, as you pointed out, is going to be.
Well, then, I guess what I'm looking at, Madam Mayor, is, I hope this is the right resolution, the resolution for denial.
This is the one.
Okay.
Does it contain section 3 on the bottom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I suppose the area that is the sticking point for me is item 2. Because if I look at item 2, it appears to me that if that comes forward, then that would be off the table for consideration, even after we would concur and agree to do the outreach.
How about if we put in to name the entirety of 8th Street, would that address your? Because I think that the original proposal is from Ayton to McCabe, is that
Okay.
correct?
Why,
So,
okay, why, Mr. Hernandez, would you help me? What if Madam Mayor, with your indulgence, if we're looking at this particular resolution, hopefully you have that one before you. Item 1, that the foregoing is true and correct and adopted. Skip item 2, and then go to 3, that the city council hereby pledges its support and commitment to work with the community members in identifying an enduring and fitting memorial. Just eliminate that 8 so that if we wish to bring that forward again, that option would be available. Is that something that,
Well, the question before the council is whether or not to rename the entirety of 8th Street.
okay, so if we eliminate if we put in the word entirety, that would satisfy the area that I'm trying to reach here?
Yeah, I think if in number 2, to rename the entirety of 8th Street, I think you would, that leaves you plenty of room to have your
Okay,
option as
all
you
right.
Back with an
suggested.
alternative.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Did you have additional points, Ms. Sanders?
Not at this time. I may before it's over.
Mr. Solomon? Mr. Solomon?
I would also like to concur with Mr. Silver with the fact that Cesar Chavez should have an opportunity to have a street, something named here in the Imperial Valley or in El Centro for him. So I would be really open to that.
To have that included in our discussion, yes.
And I'd like to work with the committee.
Okay, we need to get a motion.
like
We
to
need to
work
get
with
to
the
that
committee.
point.
Okay, I move for resolution number 09,
140.
resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro denying a petition to rename 8th Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, as presented by staff, including
The amendment,
including the amendments
That's
as
right.
proposed by Ms. Sanders.
that's right. Is that satisfactory, Mr. Hernandez?
Just to be clear, that we're talking about the one that includes number 3, and then also would amend item number 2 to rename the entirety of 8th
That's
Street.
right.
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Silva, a second by Ms. Sanders. Please ballot.
Now, okay, I'm sorry. Do we need to redo it?
It's not turning on, I don't know why.
Do I need to hit,
Want to reset?
Oh.
do I need to hit
No,
abstain for Ms. Redmond?
I think she needs to, do you need to reset?
Okay, go ahead, I
Okay.
do it again.
You want to?
Do it again. No, I turned yours off. Still not doing it?
Is it not doing it?
I'm sorry, do it one more time.
All right, third time?
No, not John. No.
You're-
She said she turned it off, Jeff. That's why it's not. Okay. I think for the benefit of the audience, Ms. Walker, if you wouldn't mind, explain to them the action that we actually just took so that they would understand what this, what's going to happen in the,
Okay, here's where we're at. City of El Centro, City Council has just adopted a resolution that denies the subject petition to rename the entirety of 8th Street. At the same time, the City Council hereby pledges its support and commitment to work with the community members in identifying an enduring and fitting memorial to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. So at this point in time, what we will do to...
no, with the amendment, that the amendment didn't, yeah.
With
That's-
that,
with the
right,
amendment.
that it says denies the subject petition to rename the entirety of 8th Street, which means that the renaming of a portion of 8th Street
Can be in place.
remains a possibility. The 2 sections of 8th Street that have been called out by council members have been that portion of 8th Street that extends from Adams Avenue north to the city limit at Ayton, or conversely, from Ross Avenue south to McCabe Road.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
is it clear?
Okay, so now at this point, I would like to ask for volunteers to form up an ad hoc committee to work on two issues. And perhaps we have two different task force, although I would prefer it be the same members. To work with the community members to come up with the memorial recommendation, and also to work with city staff on modifying the street naming policy.
I'd be happy to do it. I might suggest, Madam Mayor, that there be two separate, I don't want the issues to get convoluted.
Well,
So
well, Mr. Edney
I would certainly volunteer at
He could
either
volunteer
committee.
for one, but
Right.
of course, he would be precluded from volunteering for the other.
Well, so it'd probably be best if I work on the policy, because in case 8th Street comes back.
Okay, we
And I
have
would be happy to volunteer for that, Madam Mayor.
for the outreach, we'll call it one the policy and one the outreach.
Okay.
Which would you like to be?
Well, I could do both. Well, no, I will accept the outreach.
That's good, we're good with that, policy and outreach.
I will, you probably need two members on each one of these.
Yes, ma'am.
So then I will accept the outreach.
I would like to volunteer for the outreach as well.
Okay. Would you like to work on the policy with Mr. Edney?
That's fine with me.
Okay, Mr. Duran, if you or your designee then could join our policy committee of Mr. Solomon and Mr. Edney. Our outreach committee will be Mr. Silva and Ms. Sanders.
Madam Mayor, could I make a proposal to the council? I would suggest, in light of the confusion.
Is he allowed to do that after stepping down?
Well, you've eliminated his portion of 8th Street, as I understand it.
Okay, so he's allowed
So,
to talk. Okay, Mr.
yeah.
Edney, I just
The
want to make
conflict is,
sure.
the conflict has disappeared.
Okay.
Because we're not sitting next to each other, she's being.
Now, come on, you two.
No, I would suggest that the council direct staff to put a 90 to 120-day moratorium on any petitions for additional street naming changes until we get this figured out. I'm not talking about the King thing, that we've already formed a sub. I don't want to go down this route, and obviously we have confusion on both sides, from the opponents and the proponents, about what the policy is, whether it's a right policy. Let's not let another street name change come in until we adopt the policy.
Okay, so I would suggest, I would concur with that. 90 days seem to be, well, but the holidays, Mr. Duran, does that offer you and Mr. Hernandez enough time?
Well,
If we do 90 days?
Wait, excuse me. But the proposal from Mr. Edney is simply not to allow new petitions to come forward.
That's right.
And that really is not a staff decision, that's really a city council
Well,
decision.
if no petitions come forward, but he also added another piece to that statement, which was until we get a policy in place, so.
But this is a council policy,
I
so
know,
it's
I
our
know.
term.
It is our term, but you're going to be working with the staff in formulating the policy, so I'm thinking, are you not?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm thinking, if the 90 days is satisfactory, does that, with the two committees that we now have working, and with the upcoming charter working,
I think your point's valid. I would say, okay, if you want me to change it and say not put a date on it until the city council adopts a revised policy. And then this is not a way to deflect, because we've already formed the outreach policy on this particular application. I don't want to get into this with another proposed change until we come up with a policy that makes, as you suggested very clearly earlier, that makes very clear sense.
Okay.
And it certainly would be vetted through the legal department.
So the direction of council will be that there will be a moratorium on name change applications until a new policy has been presented and adopted by the council. Okay?
Can we get that in the form of a motion?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
We have a motion by Mr. Edney, a second by Ms. Sanders, a moratorium until such time as a new policy is adopted by the council. Ballot?
Just for clarification, on any additional application, I don't want the proponents of this to think that they can't move forward in some negotiated or discussed agreement.
Oh, there.
Last.
Motion carried 5-0.
Very good. At the December 16th meeting, if our outreach committee could come back with an identified timeframe, perhaps, as to when that will come back. Okay.
Okay.
We will now take action on our added item. Again, thank you all. We'll now take action on our added item. This was, Mr. Hernandez, did you want to state the legal justification as to why this item is coming to us now? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's, the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted.
Gentlemen, we need, yes.
Continuing.
If you're going to exit quietly.
That's okay. We have an added item on the agenda.
And the stated reason that the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted, and there's an immediate need to take action.
Okay, very good. Mr. Duran?
Yes, this came as part of the demolition of the facility. This is a shade structure that our staff has indicated cannot be economically moved. McCabe feels that they can do it. Well, we just soon have them have it. All the other ones we are taking. It's just that big wooden one we feel is not economical to move. So we would like to donate that and allow them to get it, but they have a very limited time to get that off the property.
Which one is this?
The added item.
That was the added
Yeah,
item.
move approval. Oh, it's a resolution, I'm sorry. Resolution
141.
141? 141?
Yes.
141, a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro declaring used shade structure to be needed for a public use and authorizing its donation to the McCabe Union Elementary School District.
I have a motion by Sanders, second by Solomon. Ballot, please.
Motion carried 5-0.
Very good. We have an informational item, and now this is the time for any public comments. City Council welcomes your input. You may address the council by completing a speaker slip and giving it to the city clerk. At this time, you may address the council on items that are not on the agenda. The mayor reserves the right to place a time limit on each presentation. Okay? I think we'll dispense with the council recess. Council member reports. Is there any item? Our next league dinner is going to be in Brawley on
The 10th, December 10. We hope all will RSVP. It's billed to be a very festive occasion, and we should have a lot of fun. And the price is right, $7.50.
So Lisa, do you know how many of RSVPs we have so far?
So far, we have 7.
Excellent. Okay. We should carpool up there then.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will adjourn as council and redevelopment. Let's take a look-see.
Move approval of minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the redevelopment agency
Second. Minutes for the-
second by Mr. Edney. Ballot, please.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, the other items are informational. Anything, any questions?